This is James Lupton for Pro Boxing Fans. Delighted to be joined once again on Zoom with Viddal Riley. Viddal, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How you doing? How you doing?
Very good, thank you. Very good. So you were just mentioned there off camera, we're doing a little bit of a roundup of 2020. A bit of a strange year all round. But let's talk about your year. You've managed to get one fight in back in February. How's it been for you in 2020?
2020 has been a difficult year. It's been a difficult year. I don't think anyone can deny that. We've been put in a position where we've all had to deal with things that we haven't had to deal with before. You know, when I was thinking about it the other day, you think about the last pandemic wasn't in any of our lifetimes. So it's like even you look to your parents, grandparents, and something they haven't been through. So, you know, new experience for everybody to deal with. And obviously it has an effect on the career, you know, the availability for fights, and then I had the injury as well. So in terms of boxing, I'm glad I got the win back in February, but everything's kind of taken this, you know, its toll from the injury to the fight arrangements, you know, we started off with 4 fights on the show, and then, you know, it's like limited opportunity, but I feel like I've still kept my brand in a good place. Previous year, 2019, JJ had the fight, KSI had the fight with Logan, so obviously that's a massive brand boosting year. And, you know, everyone, me and Shannon Briggs had our back and forth as well. You know, that was a great boost in the brand. But in terms of keeping it at maintenance level for this year, I feel like I've done it. So I can't complain too much.
I want to talk about, last time we spoke was before your scheduled fight on the Mike Tyson Floyd Jones undercard. Obviously, as mentioned there, injuries, your manager, Aimer, did pull you off the card. How frustrating was that for you, considering the lack of fights this year?
Very frustrating, not just because of the lack of fights, but because of the opportunity, because of how big the card ended up being. You know, when it first was announced that I was going to be on the show, it was supposed to be in LA somewhere, not a big undercard, really. Like, it was me, Jake, and Tyson who confirmed avongside the opponents. And then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it seemed to get bigger as I had to withdraw because of injury. So it's just like you withdraw from injury, and then you hear it's got 1.5 million pay-per-views, buys, and it's just like, it's frustrating, but it's good for me to see these things anyway, because later down the line, these things make you, you know, appreciate when you get to that position, and also to remember who stuck by you when you weren't in those positions. So yeah, it don't feel great right now, but it's one of those things we'll look back at and be like, oh, Tyson and Jones card, like, cool, it was a big deal then, but look now, you know.
I mean, it wasn't all bad. You did get to spend time with Mike Tyson, train alongside him down a wild card.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. The things that come out of it, I did manage to meet Tyson. I did manage to get a few pointers from him, life lessons from him. Met Roy Jones this year as well, a couple of times. I didn't meet him in his build-up to the Tyson fight, but I actually met him back in February when I was fighting. He was coaching another one of the guys on the show. So, and was sharing the same changing room. So I actually spent time with both legends this year at 2 completely separate times. And at that time, Roy wouldn't have known back in February that by the end of the year, he'd be fighting Mike. But it's crazy how it worked out. But I met both legends in the same year, and they ended up fighting in the same year. So,
I mean, in terms of the Roy Jones and Mike Tyson exhibition, it seems to have elevated the exhibitions. Now, they've always gone on. They've always happened. You know, you go back to Muhammad Ali, had an exhibition of a Japanese wrestler. You know, it's gone on for decades and decades. Why do you think the magnitude of this fight has brought it so high?
I think because they're both fighters, they're both legends, and it doesn't feel like an exhibition when you see those two names. You just think of a fight. I think that's the difference. When we see, and you know, you probably will ask me about Logan and Floyd, but when you see that, that is like an exhibition. That's a typical exhibition match. You know, one's a social media guy, one guy's one of the best boxers ever. Exhibition. It's because you've got two like for likes in there. You know, frequently here. I wish sometimes I was there to see Tyson in his prime in the 80s. Really feel what the older generation feel, but it's hard to relate to it when you've already seen the downfall. But he was the top of his game in his time. Roy was the top of his game for a long time. And when we see those guys, that's what we see. We see the highlight reel. And then when we know that they're going to collide, it takes away the exhibition effect. Watching the actual fight, they reminded you it was an exhibition anyway.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it there, Floyd Mayweather, Logan Paul, again, another exhibition, seems set for next year. Not only, those guys are not only the exhibitions, but also the YouTuber boxing seems to be elevated even further and it's getting bigger and bigger and growing. I know you wasn't best pleased with Jake Paul against Nate Robinson before the fight.
No.
Today,
no, yeah, it's like
he's been linked.
It's not anything to be impressed by. Not that he performed badly. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think people are just so sensitive. Like, he didn't perform badly. Of course he didn't. He knocked the guy out in a couple rounds. But it's not impressive. Do you know what I mean? Because the guy was a basketball player. So, and I'd say the same thing for me. If you guys say, oh, you knocked this guy out, first round, impressive knockout, I'm like, well, it's not really impressive because it's below my level. Yeah, it's just not, to be impressed, or for me to be impressed, I need to feel like you was up against a worthy opponent and then you delivered the same result. If that doesn't happen, then I don't see a reason to be impressed. And that's me talking about myself. I have to say that about myself as well. It's like, okay, standard. We expect that. Let's move on. You know, and that's just been my mentality from the beginning. If I'm boxing the ABAs, boxing in the junior ABAs, whatever, I don't get happy I won the Londons. Like, I just win it. And I'm aiming to win the whole title. So I don't want anyone to be impressed with me for winning the London, fam. That's how I feel with Jake right now. He's just fighting subpar guys. Against Gibb, I was impressed because I expected Gibb to do better and win. And he did take him out. I was impressed. Nate Robinson, come on, man. 4 months to box. If you don't do that, you're ashamed. So I have no reason to be impressed.
I've seen today, there's rumours Jake Paul will be fighting Ben Askren, former UFC fighter, in March, I believe. What are your thoughts on that?
What, the guy that's a good wrestler but can't box? Yeah, great opponent. It's a good opponent. That's why he's picking these MMA guys, because he knows these MMA guys can't box properly. And he's picking guys that are known for their ground game, but he's fooling people because he's picking people with good names, respected names in the combat world, but actually can't box. Whereas me and you would know a guy that's a journeyman that could beat him with no name. You see what I mean? So he's fooling people. So he's fighting these guys. Oh, I'm going to fight Ben Askren. Oh, I'm going to fight Dillon Danis. What, the guy that's a jiu-jitsu wizard but can't throw a jab for anything. Great. But then people are stupid, so people will fall into it and go, oh my God, he beat Dillon Danis. I'm like, well, he should, because he's practicing hands and this guy practices breaking limbs. This makes sense. But it's the same thing with the basketball. He won the slam dunk contest 3 times in a row. Okay, great. Like, it doesn't mean anything, but the fact that they're using these things to sell the fights should tell you that he ain't fighting anyone. But interesting anyway. Interesting situation, and I must add this in. Good on him, because he's a master at making us talk about him. And to achieve that in a world, current today world, where so much is going on and you can become old news overnight. Look at me, I'm old news overnight. My back and injuries, old news. Look how much things have happened since then. And he still stays in your face for weeks. So I do give him credit for that.
Do you think he's serious about having a career in boxing, or is it just a case of making money, which you can't knock a man for making some money?
I think it's a matter of I think he's enjoying it right now. I think right now, the mental place that he's in is that he can box forever. That's what I believe. We all know that's not the case. He's going to battle for more than he can chew at some point, and that will regress his interest in the sport and love for the sport. Because we all know the sport is too hard to do if it's not fun and you're getting hurt, right? And if you don't need to do it, then you won't. You'd have to be insane to have to box, and you know you're not going to be world champion. Let's face it, he's not going to be. He's a light heavyweight, cruiserweight. But if he was going to take it serious, he'd have to be light heavy, right? He ain't going to be Beterbiev, Bivol, Badu Jack, Anthony Yard, Joshua Buatsi, Lyndon Arthur. Like, let's think about it. He's not. So he's doing the right thing. He's making his money. I think he's going to score the big money fight. I think he's trying to score the big money fight against McGregor. And then he won't touch a pair of gloves again. Because at that point, if you fight McGregor, you don't need to fight KSI. Do you know what I mean? So I think he's trying to score either KSI fight, McGregor fight, big payday, move on to something else.
Absolutely. Let's get back onto track. So 2020, let's talk about your fight of the year. What's been your favourite fight?
Favorite fight of the year? Wow. You know, you have to look and see. Fury Wilder, because I was actually there. It was one of the last fights before we hit the pandemic. So you still had the electric atmosphere, MGM, Grand Garden Arena. A lot of tension was in the building when Wilder was walking to the ring because, you know, it was Black History Month and he was trying to turn it into a little race thing. And you did feel the energy in there. And then you definitely felt the energy when Tyson came out and just smashed him for like 7 rounds. I couldn't believe it. I'm watching it live. Couldn't believe it. Just made him look so poor. Picked up the title. Great production from Top Rank and PBC. I think that's my fight of the year. Just because I was there. And the fact that I actually managed to go to a fight this year is a privilege. And I know there's tons of fights after that. Loads of people would want to go to. And they haven't had the opportunity. So my favorite fight this year would be Fury Wilder 2.
What about your fighter of the year? Who's impressed you the most?
Fighter of the year. Well, Canelo just stole it. Really. I think he's the best pound for pound fighter in the world. And like, it's between him and Pacquiao anyway. For me, it's between him and Manny Pacquiao. You can't talk about pound for pound and not mention the current active super WBA welterweight champion of the world, 8 weight divisions. And if we're talking pound for pound, that's evident of pound for pound. So between Canelo and Pacquiao didn't fight. Did he fight this year? Did he fight Furman this year, or was that last year?
I want to say it was last year, top of my head.
That was last year, isn't it? Yeah, so Canelo. Fight of the year, Canelo. Callum Smith is not an average fighter, and he was made to look average against Canelo. Great. We're talking about a guy that's won the World Boxing Super Series. Dominant in his weight. Proved he's the best. Ring Magazine, WBC, WBA. And that's it.
What about your knockout of the year?
Ooh, knockout of the year. think it's been a long year, man. It's honestly been a long year, but I'm gonna give it to Povetkin
Okay.
knocking out Dillon White. He wasn't winning the fight. Wasn't looking like he was gonna win the fight. You see, it was something that has been drilled in the gym. Jab, make him come with the right hand off your jab. Slip, bang, perfect shot. Put him to sleep. Upset the whole heavyweight division. Povetkin, best knockout of the year.
And very finally, your prospect of the year or one to watch for 2021?
One to watch for 2021. I'm gonna go with my friend Shakur Stevenson. He's not a prospect. It's weird because in boxing you can be a prospect and be a world champion at the same time. But he, like, based on the pound for pound list names, he is a prospect. So I would say he's one to watch in 2021. He's getting better and better. He's getting bigger and bigger. He's actually starting to look more like a man now. He's always been small and scrawny, but he's starting to put on a bit of muscle now. And he's just looked dominant every performance. I don't think anyone's looked close to even beating him. No one's even looked close to cracking the code of how to beat him. The guy's surrounded by Andre Ward and Terence Crawford. Like, he learns from Andre Ward and Terence Crawford. Pick up the phone and call him whenever he likes. And I think it's showing in the ring. He's already a world champion. He's going to move up a weight, probably pick up a world title there too. He wants to fight Carl Frampton. And I think he cleans up. I can't see anyone. Like, Teofimo's look more vulnerable than Shakur Stevenson, for example. And Teofimo hasn't even looked that vulnerable. Yeah, he's the one to watch for me, 2021. See what he does.
Perfect. Viddal, as always, a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, man.
And to pro boxing fans, and I'll speak soon.
Appreciate you, bro. Thank you very much.